At the airport, after refusing to fund another failed business scheme, my parents and brother canceled my ticket and left me stranded at Heathrow. No boarding pass, no phone, no passport. I stood there clutching the torn pieces of my ticket while passengers streamed past me like I didn't exist. A man in an impeccable gray suit, the kind that costs more than my monthly salary, walked toward me with purpose. He leaned close and whispered, "Pretend you're my wife. Airport security is watching. In 10 seconds, they'll ask if you need help." His voice was calm, controlled, British. Then he added with a knowing look, "Trust me, they'll regret this." And he was absolutely right. I had no idea just how right he would be. My name is Leona Waters, and I'm 36 years old. Before I tell you how this billionaire's promise changed everything, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next? My family had no idea who they were really dealing with, and neither did I. The morning had started with Kevin's hand on my shoulder at the check-in counter. "Leo, could you grab Mom's carry-on from that bench? She left her medication in there."
Such a simple request.
Such a perfect distraction. I'd turned away for maybe 90 seconds. When I came back, my father was sliding something across the counter to the airline agent, his voice low and urgent. The agent nodded, typed something into her computer, and my father pocketed what I later realized was my passport. He'd taken it from my handbag while I'd been digging through Mom's luggage. "All sorted," Dad said brightly when he saw me approaching. "Gate 23, love. We should head through security." My mother was already moving toward the queue, her Burberry scarf draped just so. She turned back and smiled. "Darling, let me take a quick photo of us before we go through. You know how I like to document our trips." She held out her manicured hand for my phone. I gave it to her without thinking. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. The photo took 30 seconds. She made us pose twice, fussing about the lighting. Then she slipped my phone into her handbag with a practiced movement I might have missed if I'd blinked. "I'll edit these and send them to you later, sweetheart. My phone has better filters." Kevin steered me toward the security line, chatting about the resort spa, the infinity pool, how this family holiday was exactly what we all needed after the stress of the past year. The stress, of course, being his third failed restaurant venture that I'd bailed out to the tune of £40,000. At the gate, it all unraveled with surgical precision. The agent scanned my boarding pass and frowned. "I'm sorry, Ms. Waters, but this booking has been canceled." I laughed. It had to be a mistake. No, my father booked all 4 of us. There must be. Mom, Dad? I turned around. They were gone. Kevin was gone. The priority boarding queue was empty except for a flight attendant closing the door. I ran to the glass, pressed my hands against it, and saw them. Kevin had his headphones on. My mother was checking her lipstick in a compact mirror. My father was reading the Financial Times. None of them looked back. The gate agent was speaking something about rebooking, about needing my passport, about contact information. I reached for my phone to call them, to demand an explanation. My pockets were empty. My handbag held a wallet with 3 canceled credit cards. I'd check that later when the ATM rejected them all, a pack of tissues, and a boarding pass for a flight that no longer existed. My mother's voice echoed in my head from breakfast that morning. "You're on your own now, darling. Maybe this will teach you some gratitude." They'd planned this. For weeks, probably. Maybe months. Robert Greenfield found me 20 minutes later, standing frozen at the departure gate, still holding my useless boarding pass like it might transform back into something real. "Don't turn around," he said quietly. "In 10 seconds, airport security will ask if you need help. When they do, take my hand and say I'm your husband." I took his hand. I followed him toward the exit. What else was I going to do? The private jet was smaller than I'd imagined, all cream leather and polished wood that probably cost more than my flat. Robert waited until we were airborne before he spoke, pouring himself 2 fingers of scotch from a crystal decanter that didn't so much as tremble during takeoff. My business partner is attempting a hostile takeover of my company, he said, as casually as someone might mention the weather. Marcus Thornton. We built Greenfield Thornton Properties together 15 years ago. Last month, my divorce was finalized. He's using it as evidence that I'm unstable, distracted, unfit to lead a billion-pound enterprise. I was still processing the fact that I was 30,000 feet in the air with a complete stranger. And you think a wife fixes that? A stable, intelligent wife who can hold her own in a boardroom? He met my eyes.
Yes.
It projects exactly what the board needs to see. That I've moved on. That I'm focused. That the chaos in my personal life is resolved. I'm not stable, I said flatly. My family just abandoned me at an airport. Your family are parasites who got nervous when their cash cow finally said no. He set down his glass. I had you researched while we were in the car. Leona Waters, financial analyst at Morrison & Chase for 8 years. Impeccable record. You've funded your brother's business failures 3 times, covered your parents' mortgage arrears twice, and paid for your mother's cosmetic procedures. You're not unstable. You're exhausted. The fact that he'd researched me should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something sharp and cold settle in my chest. What are the terms? 6 months. You attend board meetings, investor dinners, and select social functions as my wife. You live at my estate in Cheshire. In exchange, £75,000, paid in full at the end of the contract. Professional arrangement only. Separate bedrooms. You're free to leave at any time, though you forfeit payment if you break contract. £75,000. 6 months of pretending. 6 months of safety while I figured out how to rebuild my life without my family's claws in my bank account. I need access to your lawyers, I said. Immediately. Not in 6 months. Tomorrow. His eyebrow lifted slightly.
Why?
Because my grandmother left me £800,000 and 2 properties when she died last year. And I just realized why my family was so eager to get me out of the country. My voice stayed steady, clinical. They're going to try to take it. They've probably already started. Robert studied me for a long moment, then pulled out his phone. Caroline Webb, best barrister in Manchester. I'll have her meet us when we land. He extended his hand across the polished table between us. Do we have a deal, Ms. Waters? I shook his hand. His grip was firm, businesslike. We have a deal, Mr. Greenfield. But I want it in writing before we land. He smiled then, just slightly. I thought you might. By the time the wheels touched down in Manchester, I'd signed a contract that would either save my life or destroy what was left of it. Robert's estate wasn't a house.
It was a statement.
Georgian architecture sprawling across manicured grounds, the kind of place that appeared in country life with captions about historic significance and architectural preservation. The gravel drive alone was longer than my street in Manchester. A housekeeper named Mrs. Patterson showed me to a guest suite that could have swallowed my entire flat. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked formal gardens. The bathroom had heated marble floors. The closet was bigger than my childhood bedroom. Mr. Greenfield asked me to provide you with essentials until you can arrange your own shopping, Mrs. Patterson said, gesturing to shopping bags from Selfridges lined up on the bed. Clothing, toiletries. He estimated sizes based on, well, everything should fit. I should have been uncomfortable with that level of presumption. Instead, I felt a wave of exhausted gratitude. I had nothing, not even a toothbrush. Thank you, I managed. She nodded and left me alone in a room that cost more to furnish than I'd earned in a year. I was examining the contents of the shopping bags, cashmere, silk, brands I recognized from magazines, when my grandmother's solicitor called. I'd given Robert's estate number to exactly 3 people, my bank, my employer, and Thomas Whitmore of Whitmore and Associates. His voice was strained. Ms. Waters, I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. Your mobile goes straight to voicemail. My family took my phone. What's happened? A pause. Your brother Kevin submitted documents to our office yesterday claiming you granted your parents power of attorney over your inheritance approximately 6 months ago. The paperwork appears to be in order.
Notarized.
Your signature. The room tilted slightly. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I never signed anything. I've never even discussed power of attorney with them. I suspected as much, which is why I'm calling. Ms. Waters, they've already begun liquidation proceedings on your grandmother's properties. The Didsbury flat has been listed with an estate agent as of this morning. They're claiming you're currently traveling abroad and have authorized them to handle the sale in your absence. They stranded me at Heathrow, I said, my voice perfectly calm. Shock, probably. Cancel my ticket, took my passport and phone, and left me in London with no way to get home. That was yesterday morning. Thomas Whitmore was quiet for a moment. That's remarkably calculated timing. They planned this. The words came out flat, factual. They got me out of the country, so I couldn't stop them. How long do I have? If the signature is proven fraudulent, the power of attorney is void. But Ms. Waters, they're moving quickly. I'd estimate you have perhaps a week before the sale completes on the first property. After that, unwinding the transaction becomes exponentially more complicated. I need the documents. Everything they submitted. Can you send them here? I gave him the estate address. I'll courier them this afternoon. Ms. Waters, you'll need a very good solicitor. I have one, I said, thinking of Caroline Webb waiting downstairs in Robert's study. She's already here. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the window. Beyond the glass, peacocks wandered across the lawn like they owned the place. My family had tried to steal my future while I was stranded and helpless. They'd made a miscalculation. I wasn't helpless anymore. Caroline Webb wore Armani and carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had survived a decade of courtroom warfare. She spread the forged documents across Robert's study table with the precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. The signature is competent but not perfect, she said, producing an authentication magnifier. See here? The pressure variation is wrong. You loop your L clockwise. This forger went counterclockwise. Amateur work, really, but effective enough to fool a solicitor who isn't looking for fraud. I leaned over the documents, anger crystallizing into something sharper. Focus. What do we need to prove it's fake? 3 things. First, documented evidence of your competency, bank statements, employment records, medical evaluations showing you're of sound mind. Second, handwriting analysis from a certified examiner. Third, and most damaging to them, evidence of motive and opportunity. Caroline looked up at me. Your family's financial history. Every loan, every bailout, every transaction you funded. We paint a picture of exploitation, then show the jury, or more likely, the judge, exactly why they'd commit fraud. I have records, I said. Bank transfers going back 8 years. Emails from Kevin asking for money. Text messages from my mother about their mortgage. Excellent. I'll need all of it. She pulled out a laptop. We'll also need a psychiatric evaluation. Standard procedure when someone's competency is being questioned. I know someone who can see you tomorrow. Robert had been silent until now, standing by the window with his phone. He turned. How long before they can liquidate the properties? If we move quickly, we can file for an emergency injunction by end of week. That freezes all transactions pending investigation. Caroline's smile was razor-sharp. They'll know they've been caught the moment the paperwork hits. I spent the next 3 hours uploading bank statements, forwarding emails, screenshotting text messages. 8 years of financial abuse, documented in ruthless detail. Kevin's restaurant ventures. My parents' temporary mortgage help that became permanent. My mother's cosmetic procedures, my father's car lease, the family holiday to Dubai I'd funded while eating meal deal sandwiches for lunch. By the time Caroline left with a briefcase full of evidence, it was nearly evening. Robert appeared in the study doorway with a stack of financial reports. I have a board meeting Thursday, he said. Marcus is proposing an acquisition strategy that the board seems inclined to approve. I think it's financially reckless, but I need numbers to prove it. I looked up from my laptop. What's he proposing? Expansion into European luxury developments.
Berlin, Prague, Budapest.
He's projecting 20% returns within 3 years. May I see the proposal? He handed me the documents. I spent 90 minutes dissecting Thornton's projections, cross-referencing them against European property market data, analyzing his cost assumptions and revenue forecasts. He's underestimating construction costs by at least 30%, I said finally, turning my laptop toward Robert. Berlin's building regulations alone will add 6 months and €2 million per project. And his occupancy projections assume a market growth rate that hasn't existed since 2019. His 20% return is actually a 12% loss. Robert stared at the spreadsheet I'd built. Can you present this to the board? As your wife who happens to have a financial background? I met his eyes. Absolutely. He smiled then, genuine and surprised. They're going to underestimate you. Everyone does, I said. That's when I win. The boardroom occupied the top floor of Greenfield Thornton's Manchester headquarters, all glass and steel and views that stretched to the Pennines. 12 board members sat around a table that probably cost more than a small car. Marcus Thornton sat directly across from Robert, silver-haired and perfectly composed in a Seville Row suit. He barely glanced at me when Robert introduced me as his wife. Just a polite nod, the kind you'd give to decorative furniture. Gentlemen, Marcus began, activating the presentation screen. And lady, he added as an afterthought. The European expansion represents our best opportunity for growth. Conservative projections show 20% returns within 3 years. I watched the numbers appear on screen. The same inflated projections I dismantled 2 nights ago. Robert leaned forward. Marcus, I have concerns about the cost assumptions. Of course you do. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. Robert, with respect, you've been distracted lately. The divorce, the personal upheaval. Perhaps we should let the numbers speak for themselves rather than gut instinct. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. One older gentleman, Sir James something or other, nodded in agreement. The numbers are wrong, I said quietly. The room went silent. Marcus looked at me properly for the first time, his expression hovering between amusement and irritation. I'm sorry. Your cost projections for Berlin alone underestimate regulatory compliance by approximately 30%. Germany's building codes require environmental impact assessments, heritage reviews for any construction within 2 kilometers of protected sites, and union consultation periods that your timeline doesn't account for. I reached for Robert's laptop, which we'd positioned deliberately within my reach. May I? Robert slid it toward me without a word. I pulled up the spreadsheet I'd prepared and connected to the room's display system. Your revenue projections assume market growth rates that haven't existed since 2019. Here's the actual European luxury property performance over the past 4 years. I advanced to the next slide. And here's what happens when we apply realistic construction timelines and accurate cost assessments to your expansion model. The numbers on the screen told the story in red ink. Your projected 20% return is actually a 12% loss, I continued. That's £60 million. Perhaps more if Prague's regulatory environment continues to tighten, which 3 separate market analysts predict. Marcus's jaw tightened. And you've arrived at this conclusion, how exactly? I'm a financial analyst. Morrison and Chase, 8 years. I met his gaze steadily. I've evaluated 17 European property portfolios. 6 of them made assumptions similar to yours. 4 are currently in receivership. Sir James leaned forward, studying the screen. These German building code complications, can you elaborate? I spent the next 20 minutes walking them through every flaw in Marcus's proposal. The board members stopped looking at Marcus and started taking notes. When I finished, the chairman cleared his throat. I move that we table the European expansion pending a comprehensive feasibility review. All in favor? 9 hands went up. Marcus's face was stone. Robert's hand found mine briefly under the table. A squeeze of gratitude, or perhaps relief. Marcus gathered his papers with mechanical precision. As the board members filed out, he paused beside me. That was quite performance, Mrs. Greenfield. That was due diligence, Mr. Thornton. I smiled pleasantly. Someone has to protect the shareholders. His eyes flickered with something cold. Recognition, perhaps. Or calculation. He left without another word. Robert waited until the room emptied before he spoke. You just made an enemy. I just saved your company £50 million, I corrected. The enemy was already there. Caroline Webb arrived at the estate 3 days after the board meeting with a document that was part prenuptial agreement, part corporate merger. She spread it across the dining room table where Robert and I sat with our morning coffee. This is more comprehensive than your original contract, she said. A legal marriage provides substantially stronger protection for both of you. Ms. Waters, your family cannot claim you're mentally incompetent if you're married and managing complex financial affairs. Mr. Greenfield, a stable marriage silences the board's concerns about your judgment and personal life. How long? I asked. 1 year minimum. After that, you can divorce quietly or extend the arrangement as you see fit. Caroline flipped to a marked page. Financial protections for both parties. Ms. Waters retains sole ownership of her inheritance and any business ventures she establishes. Mr. Greenfield's assets remain separate except for a settlement of £250,000 payable to Ms. Waters upon completion of the 1-year term, regardless of whether the marriage continues. I looked up sharply. That's more than triple our original agreement. You've proven yourself indispensable to his business, Caroline said simply. This reflects your actual value, not your desperation value. Robert was watching me carefully. You saved the company £50 million. That's worth $250,000 in anyone's mathematics. There's also this, Caroline continued, a cohabitation clause. You'll maintain the appearance of a genuine marriage, shared residence, public appearances together, joint attendance at family events should they arise. But the arrangement remains professional unless both parties explicitly agree otherwise. She looked between us. The contract includes provisions for renegotiation if circumstances change. The word hung in the air. If. When do we sign? Robert asked. The registry office can accommodate you Friday morning. Quiet ceremony, 2 witnesses. I've arranged for maximum discretion. Caroline produced 2 pens from her briefcase. But the contract should be signed now, before the legal marriage, to ensure it's not classified as a post-nuptial agreement subject to different scrutiny. I read through every page. The protections were ironclad. My inheritance secured. My business ventures protected. An exit strategy that left me financially independent regardless of what happened. There's one addition I'd like, I said. Access to Greenfield Thornton's legal team for any matters related to my family's fraud, paid by the company, not deducted from my settlement. Robert didn't hesitate. Agreed. Caroline added. She made the notation in precise handwriting. I signed first. Leona Margaret Waters. My grandmother's middle name. Robert signed second, his signature bold and unhesitating. Congratulations, Caroline said dryly. You're now contractually obligated to save each other. After she left, Robert poured us both whiskey despite it being barely noon. To mutually beneficial arrangements, he said, raising his glass. I raised mine. To partnerships built on competence instead of sentiment. We drank. The whiskey burned pleasantly. For what it's worth, Robert said quietly, I'm beginning to suspect this is the most honest relationship I've ever had. Everything on paper. No pretense about what we're doing or why. Honesty through contracts, I said. There's something perfectly British about that. He laughed, genuine and surprised.
Friday, then.
Mrs. Greenfield. Friday, I agreed. Mr. Waters has a nice ring to it, don't you think? His smile widened. Not a chance. They arrived on a Tuesday morning in my father's Jaguar, the one I'd helped finance 3 years ago when his consulting business needed a professional image. Mrs. Patterson intercepted them at the door, but my mother's voice carried through the entrance hall with practiced projection. We're here for our daughter. Tell Leona her family is here to bring her home. I was in the study reviewing Caroline's injunction paperwork when Robert appeared in the doorway. Your family is demanding to see you. I can have them removed or...
No.
I stood, smoothing my skirt. A rice piece from the shopping bags, cream silk that cost more than my family had ever spent on me. Let them in. Is Caroline here? In the library with the documents.
Good.
Have her join us in the drawing room. This ends today. My mother swept in first, all theatrical concern, and Chanel No. 5. Kevin followed, his jaw set in that self-righteous expression he'd perfected. My father brought up the rear, looking uncomfortable in a way that almost resembled shame. Almost. Leona, darling, thank God. My mother reached for me. I stepped back. Her hands fell. We've been so worried. When you disappeared from the airport, we thought something terrible had happened. You mean when you canceled my ticket, took my passport and phone, and left me stranded? My voice was perfectly level. That disappearance? Kevin moved forward. Leo, this man has clearly manipulated you. We're here to help. Sit down. I gestured to the sofa. All of you. Something in my tone made them obey. Caroline entered with her briefcase, followed by Robert, who leaned against the mantelpiece with his arms crossed. This is Caroline Webb, my barrister, I said. She has some documents to show you. Caroline spread them across the coffee table with clinical precision. The forged power of attorney. Bank statements showing 8 years of transfers. Emails and text messages, printed and highlighted. The handwriting analysis report. You forged my signature, I said. You attempted to liquidate my inheritance while I was incapacitated abroad. That's fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Criminal charges, not civil. My father went pale. Leona, we can explain.
No.
The word came out sharp. You planned this for weeks. Got me out of the country, took my resources, and tried to steal everything Gran left me. The grandmother who actually loved me, who saw what you were. I leaned forward. Here's what happens next. You withdraw all claims to my inheritance. You sign documents admitting the power of attorney was falsified. You disappear from my life permanently. Or... Kevin's voice was defiant, but his hands were shaking. Caroline answered. Or we file criminal charges tomorrow morning. Fraud carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. We have documentation of 8 years of financial exploitation, which establishes pattern and intent. The Crown Prosecution Service will be very interested. My mother's composure cracked. You can't do this. We're your family. You're the people who abandoned me at an airport and tried to steal my future. I stood. You have 24 hours to sign the withdrawal documents Caroline will send. After that, we proceed with criminal charges. Leona, please. My father's voice broke. I gave you everything for 15 years, I said quietly. My savings, my security, my self-respect. You taught me I was only worth what I could give you. So, here's my final gift. I'm giving you a choice. Take it and leave. Kevin stood abruptly. This is insane. You're going to regret. Robert moved from the mantelpiece. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Kevin stopped mid-sentence. Mrs. Patterson will show you out, I said. The documents will arrive by courier this afternoon. My mother tried one last time as they reached the door. When this man abandons you, don't come crawling back to us. I smiled. It felt like ice. I won't need to. I have something you never gave me. What's that? A future I own. The door closed behind them. My hands were steady.
My voice was steady.
Everything was steady except the feeling in my chest that might have been grief or might have been freedom. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. The confrontation was over, but the real battle was just beginning. If you're hooked on this story, make sure you're subscribed because the courtroom showdown is going to prove exactly why my grandmother warned me about them. You won't want to miss what the judge says. The Royal Courts of Justice looked exactly like justice should, imposing, Victorian, built from stone that had witnessed a century of human failings. Caroline walked beside me up the steps, her briefcase containing 8 years of documented betrayal. They didn't sign the withdrawal documents, she told me 3 days ago. Your father wanted to negotiate. Your mother believes you're bluffing. Then we proceed, I'd said. Now we sat in a courtroom with oak paneling and a judge who looked like she'd heard every variation of human greed and found none of them surprising. My family sat across the aisle with a solicitor who kept glancing at our evidence folders with visible concern. Justice Eleanor Hartwick reviewed the initial petitions with surgical precision. The Waters family claims Ms. Leona Waters granted power of attorney over her inheritance due to diminished mental capacity following emotional distress. They've submitted documents dated 6 months ago. She looked up. Ms. Webb. Caroline stood. Your Honor, the power of attorney is a forgery. We have conclusive handwriting analysis from Dr. Patricia Chin, one of the UK's foremost document examiners. Dr. Chin took the stand and spent 20 minutes explaining pressure points, loop formations, and microscopic ink patterns. She showed enlarged photographs of my signature versus the forgery. The differences are definitive. This document was not signed by Ms. Waters. My grandmother's solicitor, Thomas Whitmore, testified next. Ms. Waters never discussed power of attorney with me. Her grandmother's will was explicit. The inheritance was to go solely to Leona, with no access granted to other family members. Mrs. Waters Sr. feared her son, and his wife would exploit her granddaughter financially. Did she state why she had this fear? Justice Hartwick asked.
Yes.
She'd watched them do it for years. Caroline presented the bank statements next, each transfer highlighted in yellow. £40,000 for Kevin's restaurant. $25,000 for the mortgage. $18,000 for cosmetic procedures. The numbers painted a portrait of systematic exploitation. Ms. Waters funded her family's lifestyle for 8 years while living in a modest flat and working full-time, Caroline said. When her grandmother's inheritance gave her the means to escape this pattern, her family moved to seize it. The psychiatric evaluation came last. Dr. Jameson's report was unequivocal. Ms. Waters demonstrates complete mental competency, excellent financial judgment, and no signs of diminished capacity. Her decision to limit contact with her family appears to be a healthy boundary, not evidence of instability. My mother whispered urgently to their solicitor. My father stared at his hands. Kevin's jaw was clenched so tight, I could see the muscle jumping. Justice Hartwick removed her glasses. The evidence is overwhelming. The power of attorney is declared void due to fraudulent documentation. All claims to Ms. Waters' inheritance are dismissed. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the Crown Prosecution Service for investigation of fraud and forgery. She looked directly at my parents. You attempted to steal from your daughter using falsified legal documents. That is not a family dispute. That is a crime. The gavel came down. Caroline's hand found my shoulder briefly as we stood. It's done. 3 weeks later, Kevin's email appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, Please, Leo. I hovered over it for exactly 3 seconds, reading the preview text. I know you're angry, but we're still family, and Dad is. I clicked delete. Some things don't deserve to be read. Some people don't deserve a response. I had a business to build. Justice felt good, but it wasn't the ending I needed. It was just the beginning. If you're rebuilding your life after cutting off toxic people, subscribe and let me know in the comments. What are you building now that you're free? Your future is waiting, just like mine was. The office occupied the 11th floor of a spinning fields building, all glass and clean lines with views across Manchester to the Pennines beyond. Waters Financial Consulting, the brass plaque read, "My name, my business, built on competence, not sentiment." The Hartley Group signed. My assistant Sophie announced, setting the contract on my desk. Full advisory services for their European expansion. That's your third major client this quarter. I signed the approval paperwork, allowing myself a moment of satisfaction. 18 months ago, I'd been stranded at an airport with nothing. Now I had 12 employees, a client roster that would have made my former bosses weep, and a reputation for the kind of brutal financial honesty that saved companies millions. The kind of honesty that had started in a boardroom, dismantling Marcus Thornton's fantasy projections. "Your 4 o'clock is here," Sophie said. I looked up. Robert stood in the doorway in his shirt sleeves, tie loosened, looking pleasantly rumpled in a way that suggested he'd come straight from his own office across town. "You're early," I said. "Your assistant terrifies me. I didn't dare be late." He closed the door and settled into the chair across from my desk. "The Cheshire House is too quiet. Mrs. Patterson asked if we're still coming for dinner Sunday. Tell her yes, and that I'll bring the wine this time, since you have appalling taste." He smiled. We'd been married for 18 months. The contract had expired 6 months ago. Neither of us had mentioned divorce. "Marcus resigned from the board yesterday," Robert said. "Took a position in Singapore. Something about needing a fresh start after his development proposals kept getting rejected. Couldn't have happened to a nicer person. The board wants you to consult on the next expansion strategy. Officially this time, not as my decorative wife who happens to have financial expertise." I raised an eyebrow. "What's the rate?" "Extortionate, knowing you." "Naturally." He stood, moved to the window beside my desk. Manchester glittered in the late afternoon sun. "Your family's case concluded last week. Kevin took a plea deal. Community service and restitution. Your parents avoided charges by cooperating with the investigation. I'd stopped following it months ago." "Good." "That's all?" "Just good. What else is there?" I turned to face him. "They're not my family anymore. They haven't been since Heathrow. Maybe they never were." Robert was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever regret it? Cutting them off completely?"
No.
The answer came without hesitation. "They taught me I was only worth what I could give them. You showed me I was worth something on my own." I gestured at the office, the city beyond. "This is what I built when I stopped funding other people's failures and started investing in my own competence." "For what it's worth," he said, "I think your grandmother would be proud." My throat tightened unexpectedly. She used to tell me that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stay when staying is difficult. Is that what we're doing? Choosing to stay? I met his eyes. Somewhere in the past 18 months, the contract marriage had become something else.
Partnership.
Friendship. Maybe more if we were honest about it. "Yes," I said simply. "I think that's exactly what we're doing." He smiled, the genuine one that only appeared when he forgot to be the billionaire CEO. "Dinner tonight? I'll cook. You'll burn something and we'll order takeaway." "Probably. But the attempt counts." I saved my work and shut down my computer. My office. My business. My choice. The family who'd abandoned me at an airport had given me the greatest gift imaginable. They'd freed me to build a life with people who actually deserved a place in it. "Let's go home," I said. And we did.